Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan says India has buried the concept of secularism due to its extremist Hindutva policy. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Indian minorities and the protesting farmers face discrimination. Qureshi further said Islamabad will continue to support the right to self-determination of Kashmiris. The Taliban say US-backed airstrikes in Afghanistan violate the Doha peace deal. In a statement, they said the US will get a serious response if it doesn't stop its actions against the group. This comes a day before the Taliban and the Afghan government are due to start the second round of their peace talks in Doha. Iran says it has resumed 20% uranium enrichment at its underground Fordo nuclear facility. A government spokesperson said the gas injection process into centrifuges started following President Hassan Rouhani's order. In December, the Iranian parliament approved a bill in wake of the assassination of its top nuclear scientist. A UK court has denied a US request to extradite WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange, citing concerns over his mental health. The 49-year-old whistleblower is wanted over the publication of thousands of classified documents in 2010 and 11. The US government will now have 14 days to appeal against the court's ruling. The global number of coronavirus cases has crossed 85 million with more than 1.84 million deaths. Pakistan has confirmed the presence of 2 cases of new virus strain as its death toll stands over 10,000, while the government has announced phase-wise opening of educational institutions from January 18. The US has registered over 351,000 COVID-19 deaths and more than 20.6 million infections so far. And in cricket, New Zealand trailed Pakistan by 11 runs with 7 wickets remaining at stumps on the second day of the second test in Christchurch. Kane Williamson and Henry Nicholls are currently unbeaten on 112 and 89 respectively. Earlier, the green shirts were bowled out for 297. The Kiwis are leading the 2-match series 1-0. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Pakistan says India has buried the concept of secularism due to its extremist Hindutva policy. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Indian minorities and the protesting farmers face discrimination. Qureshi said Pakistan exposed Indian terrorism in a dossier put before the world community. The foreign minister said Islamabad will continue to support the right to self-determination of Kashmiris. He added Pakistan has urged the United Nations for fair trials of the political prisoners in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Kashmiris across the world will observe the Right to Self-Determination Day tomorrow. The United Nations had adopted a resolution on January the 5th, 1949 that pledged a free and impartial plebiscite. Ahead of the day, senior Hurriyat leaders urged the United Nations to fulfill its pledge and grant them their rights. They said the world and the UN maintain a criminal silence on Indian atrocities in Kashmir. They asked the World Rights Body to probe the 1993 Sopo massacre in which 57 civilians were killed by Indian forces. They said Delhi's eviction of Kashmiris from their homeland proves that they want to seize the territory. The Taliban say US-backed airstrikes in Afghanistan violate the Doha peace deal. In a statement, they said the US will get a serious response if it doesn't stop its actions against the group. They also quoted US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo as acknowledging that the Taliban haven't targeted US forces since the signing of the pact in February 2020. Earlier in the day, airstrikes by the Afghan government left 13 Taliban killed in the eastern province of Nangarhar. The deceased also include a commander who was recently released as part of a prisoner swap under the deal. This comes a day before the Taliban and the government are due to start the second round of their peace talks in Doha. Iran says it has resumed 20% uranium enrichment at its underground Fordo nuclear facility. A government spokesman said the gas injection process into centrifuges started today following President Hassan Rouhani's orders. He said the prerequisite measures such as informing the International Atomic Energy Agency on the country's safeguard obligations have already been taken. He said the first UF6 product used in the process of enriching uranium will be available within next few hours. In December, the Iranian parliament approved a bill in wake of the assassination of its top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. The law obliges Tehran's atomic agency to produce at least 120 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium annually. The United States has reversed its decision to pull its aircraft carrier home from the Gulf. The Pentagon says the USS Nimitz will stay in position due to recent threats from Iran. The carrier has been patrolling Gulf waters since late November. On December 31st, acting U.S. Defense Secretary Christopher C. Miller ordered the vessel to transit home to complete a nearly 10-month deployment. U.S. officials said the move was part of a de-escalation effort with Tehran to avoid a conflict during President Donald Trump's last days in office. But Miller issued a new statement changing course on Sunday. He did not elaborate on the threats involved. Israeli prosecutors have released an amended indictment document against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The premier has been charged with fraud, breach of trust and accepting bribes in 3 corruption cases. The document lists 315 incidents. It stated there are indications that Netanyahu has been personally involved in 150 of these incidents. The document also included alleged requests for negative coverage of Netanyahu's rivals. Netanyahu's trial began last year and is scheduled to resume next month. The Hamas movement has called to hold a comprehensive Palestinian dialogue as soon as possible. In a televised address, Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh said his party is ready to engage in the legislative and presidential elections. Haniyeh urged the Fatah organization to put an end to bilateral disputes with Hamas over holding general elections. He stressed that Palestinians should agree on specific strategy of resistance that may help them gain their legitimate rights. Earlier, Haniyeh also sent a letter to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to show Hamas' willingness to end the internal division. Abbas welcomed Hamas's decision of ending division, building partnership and accomplishing a national unity. 9 Syrian soldiers have been killed and 8 wounded in an ambush on their convoy on a main highway in the central Syrian desert. Eyewitnesses say the soldiers were attacked near Wadi al-Azib in the western part of the desert. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack so far, which is the second such incident in less than a week. Earlier, ISIS militants ambushed 3 military buses, killing 28 soldiers in eastern Syria. Meanwhile, Syrian media says 6 civilians have been killed in a terror attack in Syria's Al Jazeera region. It also said several civilians have been kidnapped from the Al Qasarat area in the Al Raqqa city. Turkey says its security forces have neutralized 4 terrorists of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Syria. The defense ministry says the militants were trying to infiltrate the Operation Peace Spring Zone. It said the terrorists aim to disrupt peace and security in the region. The ministry said operations against the militants will continue. In Niger, the death toll from terror attacks in 2 western villages has risen to 100. Authorities say the gunmen who attacked civilians arrived on around 100 motorcycles. Prime Minister Brighi Rafini confirmed the toll as he visited the attack site near the border with Mali. However, the officials are yet to identify the perpetrators. The UN has also condemned the attack, saying Niger has been hit hard by rising extremist violence in the Lake Chad Basin. The deadliest attack in Niger's recent memory occurred on the day initial results of the presidential election were announced. In the Central African Republic, United Nations peacekeepers have repelled attacks by rebels on the city of Benghazi. In a statement, UN mission said 5 militants were killed in the clashes. The mission said the shooting ceased, but the situation remains tense in the city as peacekeepers continue the robust patrols. It secured the camp for internally displaced persons and evacuated 2 wounded soldiers. The mission said it holds rebel groups and former President Francois Bozize responsible for the violence. It said recent attacks were a bid to disrupt the presidential and legislative elections before, during, and after the polls. A UK court has denied a US request to extradite WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange, citing concerns over his mental health. The 49-year-old whistleblower is wanted over the publication of thousands of classified documents in 2010 and 11. US authorities accuse Assange of endangering lives through the release of vast troves of confidential military records and diplomatic cables. But his lawyers have argued the entire prosecution was politically motivated, powered by the US President Donald Trump. However, Judge Vanessa Bresta said she could not approve his extradition as there was a rare risk he would commit suicide. The US government will now have 14 days to appeal against the court's ruling. Nancy Pelosi has narrowly been re-elected Speaker of the US House of Representatives. She is the only woman to have ever served as Speaker and led the House for 17 years. The House voted 216 to 209 to reinstate Pelosi after Democrats lost 11 seats in November 3 elections. 5 Democrats chose not to support her. 2 voted for Democratic legislators who were not running, while 3 others simply voted present. Meanwhile, in the Senate, Vice President Mike Pence swore in 32 senators. The oath was administered in pairs due to COVID-19 restrictions. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said the new Senate was convening at a challenging time. US President Donald Trump has pressured Georgia's top election official to find enough votes to overturn his defeat in the state. Trump told his Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in a recording released by the US media.
Georgia's Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger cemented his status as an unlikely hero for U.S. Democrats following a fresh clash, in which he rejected President Trump's claims that his election defeat was the result of widespread fraud. Trump returned the former businessman to the limelight when he called Raffensperger to badger him to find enough votes to reverse Biden's victory in the state. Raffensperger is heard replying that Georgia's results were correct. The White House declined to comment. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris has called Trump's words the voice of desperation and an abuse of power. Harris was addressing an event in Georgia to seek support for Democratic Senate candidates ahead of Tuesday's consequential runoff election. Meanwhile, 10 former U.S. Secretaries of Defense have said the military should play no role in President Trump's efforts to block the transfer of power. The group, including Mark Esper, said the time had come to accept that the Republican president had lost the election. Joe Biden won Georgia alongside other swing states, winning 306 electoral college votes to Trump's 232.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The global number of coronavirus cases has crossed 85 million with more than 1.84 million deaths. The US has registered over 351,000 COVID-19 fatalities and more than 20.6 million infections so far. More in this report.
Hospitals around the world, even in most developed states, are struggling to keep up with surges in COVID-19 hospitalizations. Over in Europe, France has announced to vaccinate 26 million of its people by the summer of this year amid the wide criticism of Paris's lagging rollout program. Germany and Norway are likely to extend the national lockdowns to curb coronavirus infection rates that are still running high. Meanwhile, the UK is set to roll out the biggest immunization program in its history with the initiation of administration of Oxford's vaccine. However, despite the hopes of tens of millions of vaccinations rollout over the next 3 months, Britain is still likely to face even tougher period.
What we're doing clearly is grappling with a new variant of the virus, which is surging particularly in London and the southeast, and that's why we've had to take exceptional measures for some parts to close primary schools, keep primary schools closed temporarily.
Over in Latin America, the regional number of cases has exceeded over 15.7 million, with the worst caseload registered in Brazil. Meanwhile, U.S. experts also contradict with the President Donald Trump's claims that number of COVID-19 cases and deaths is far exaggerated in U.S., as compared to other countries that report purposely very inaccurately and low. Over in Asia, the vaccination for people in higher infection risks has been in full swing in the Chinese capital of Beijing since the program started on January 1st.
We have launched the COVID-19 vaccine dispatching platform and the inoculation management platform, docking them with Beijing Health Kit application to enable the two platforms to share data. Those who have received the initial dose could find their status on the Health Kits inquiry section, updated to first dose received. The status will be updated to vaccination completed when they receive the second dose.
Meanwhile, Japan is considering to declare a state of emergency for capital Tokyo and 3 surrounding prefectures as their cases climb. India's approval of domestically produced COVID-19 vaccine has been facing criticism over lack of required efficacy data. India has reported over 16,000 infections and 214 deaths in the past 24 hours, taking its toll to 149,000.
Well, Pakistan has confirmed the presence of a new coronavirus variant amongst 2 individuals who had visited the UK. In the past 24 hours, 39 people have lost their lives to COVID-19, taking the death toll to over 10,350. According to the National Command and Operations Centre, all inbound passengers from the UK are required to be tested for the virus on arrival. Meanwhile, the government has announced phase-wise opening of educational institutions from January 18. The health officials reported 1,895 new infections overnight. More than 35,000 active COVID-19 cases have been detected in the country. The health ministry says out of over 488,000 countrywide cases, more than 442,000 people have recovered. The US Congress has passed the Malala Yousafzai Scholarship Act, expanding the number of awards available to Pakistani women. The bill now heads to the White House for President Donald Trump to sign into law. The act mandates that at least 50% higher education scholarships to women in Pakistan from 2020 to 2022. Among other things, it requires the US Agency for International Development to brief Congress annually. Since 2010, USAID has given more than 6,000 awards to Pakistani women. This Pakistan-based scholarship bill expands this program. In 2014, Malala was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of her efforts for girls' education. In India, the death toll from the roof collapse incident has risen to 23 in the Ghaziabad district of northern Uttar Pradesh state. Rescue officials said 21 people were injured in the incident, while 38 others were rescued. They said around 100 people were attending a funeral at the site when the roof caved in. Local media says a heavy downpour during the day may have caused the incident. China's securities regulator says New York Stock Exchange plans to ban 3 Chinese telecoms firms are political. Earlier, the New York Stock Exchange said it will delist the companies to bar U.S. investment in 31 firms with alleged ties to the military. In a statement, the regulator said the delisting completely disregards the rights of the investors and market norms. It said the total market value of these firms is very small and they will handle the impact. Meanwhile, the Chinese telecoms said they had not received any delisting notification. Ties between the US and China are strained due to President Donald Trump's hardline stance against Beijing. Azerbaijan and Russia have discussed economic, energy and agricultural cooperation in 2021. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk called on Azeri President Ilham Aliyev in Baku. The Azeri state media reported both the leaders expressed confidence that bilateral relations will continue to expand. It said despite the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, the economic ties of both the countries have advanced. It stated that the talks hailed the successful development of friendly relations based on strategic partnership. The Russian Deputy Prime Minister conveyed President Vladimir Putin's greetings to Azeri President. Sudan, Egypt and Ethiopia have resumed talks on a dispute over Addis Ababa's dam on River Nile after a month. Cape Town says it called the meeting as the chair of the African Union. In a press release, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry said it accepted a draft document by the African bloc for talks. The statement added that Sudan also accepted the document while Egypt categorically rejected it. It said most of the outstanding issues were agreed upon while differences persist on the future use of the Nile waters by Ethiopia. Meanwhile, Khartoum says the 3 sides will next meet on January the 10th. In Peru, a man was rescued from his submerged vehicle as flash floods gripped swaths of Peru. The man was pulled up by rescuers after he found stranded on the roof of his vehicle surrounded by floodwaters. Flash floods have caused extensive damage across the city of Arequipa. At least 20 properties have been damaged as a result of intense rain and flash flooding. Local authorities in Arequipa advised residents to be on alert as more rain is expected. In Norway, rescue workers have uncovered a 7th body from a landslide that buried homes in a village near the capital. 3 people are still believed to be missing. Rescuers say 5 teams are working hard in the depression created by the landslide. During a visit to Usk village, King Harald V called the disaster absolutely terrible and said it was very difficult to put into words. Officials said that at least 1,000 people have been evacuated from the area. China has vowed to fight the tough battle against pollution in 2021. The country intends to build a carbon emissions trading market to revolutionize technology and reduce emissions. More in this report.
China is aiming to hit peak emissions before 2030 and to reach carbon neutrality by 2060. The goal faces enormous challenges as the country's energy structure is based on high carbon energy. Officials say the Ecology and Environment Ministry is trying to formulate an action plan.
We have already initiated the work on formulating an action plan for peaking carbon dioxide emissions. We will further comply with the requirement of the central government, speed up the pace of our work, adopt more vigorous measures to control the consumption of fossil energy, and encourage the energy production of non-fossil.
Officials say they will adjust and optimize the environmental governance pattern by accelerating the shift from terminal to source governance.
We will select over 2,000 companies from some typical industries, especially the electric power industry, and allocate relevant carbon emission quotas to them in a relatively short time. We will accelerate building the support system. The registration system is in Wuhan and the trading system is in Shanghai. The first carbon emission trading order will be launched online as soon as possible.
Data shows China has carried out carbon emission trading trials in 7 provinces since 2011. 430 million tons of carbon dioxide has been traded, with a total trading volume of nearly $1.53 billion.
European stocks advanced on the first trading session of the new year, bucking the trend set in Asia. The pan-European stock 600 climbed by over 1%, with travel and leisure stocks bouncing 3.2% to lead the gains. London's FTSE 100 rose by 2.2% in its first day of trading, with Britain outside the European Union's orbit. Meanwhile, Germany's DAX gained 1.1% to trade below all-time highs, and France's CAC 40 was up 1.3%. In cricket, New Zealand trailed Pakistan by 11 runs with 7 wickets remaining at stumps on the second day of their second test in Christchurch. The Kiwis concluded day 2 at 286 for 3. Williamson and Nichols are currently unbeaten on 112 and 89 respectively. For Pakistan, Shaheen Afridi, Mohammad Abbas and Fahim Ashraf scored 1 wicket each. Earlier, the Green Shirts were bowled out for 297. The Kiwis are leading the 2-match series 1-0. In the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich fought back from 2 goals down to beat second-bottom Mainz 5-2 in a rip-roaring contest. The result left Bayern on 33 points from 14 games, 2 more than second-placed RB Leipzig.
The German title holders trailed 2-0 at halftime before the look depart, as Robert Lewandowski continued his scoring run with a late brace, which took his tally to 22 goals in all competitions. Meanwhile, in another fixture, Borussia Dortmund returned to the top 4 with a 2-0 victory over VfL Wolfsburg. Jadon Sancho scored his first goal of the season. The hosts stepped up their intensity in the second half at the Signal Iduna Park and took the lead when Swiss centre-back Akanji headed home a Sancho corner in the 66th minute. The result lifted Dortmund to 4th in the league on 25 points, while Wolfsburg slipped to 6th, 1 point behind their hosts.
Was